So for a practitioner, when you think about the combination of Cisco plus Splunk, one of the jobs that everyone struggles with is how do I get my data into Splunk?
Yeah.
No.
And maybe you could talk a little bit about what we're doing with the technical add-ons and how that's going to impact the ability to just practically day-to-day get the data into Splunk.
When we started on this journey, right, about a year before Tom came on, a lot of skepticism in the market was around, well, the vision sounds great. We'll see whether the execution's happening, right?
Yep. It's great to get like experience from all of you. Like if I'm starting out, it's worrying with AI. It's worrying like the new SOC that might come along. But I mean, it sounds like it's getting better for
Do you
the
mean
defenders.
people worrying about their jobs going away? I don't think AI in this domain context eliminates jobs. If you go ask people in the security space what they're worried about, it's enough human capacity to go actually tackle the threat landscape as it emerges and evolves. It's growing exponentially.
Everyone, it's David Bombal coming to you from Cisco Live with G2, Tom, and Tom. Great to have you here. You were saying off camera, everyone's asking you, Splunk and Cisco, people want to know what's going on. So perhaps you can take us down the journey a bit.
Sure.
Why the acquisition? Why is it important? What's it going to do to the future?
Well, so we, if you think in the age that we're living in right now, security is a data problem.
Yep.
Right? And you got to make sure that you've got the most effective correlation of data sets across multiple different control points so that you can make sure you can effectively predict and prevent a breach from happening. Not just detect, but predict and prevent a breach from happening. I think Splunk takes us infinitely farther in that mission because we've got some of the most potent data on the network, and every packet that flows through the network, we've got a lot of potent data on the endpoint. We've got a lot of potent data on the web. And then now we've got data on every log and every event that happens. And I think the combination of Cisco and Splunk together is truly what actually gets very interesting. And so, we can talk a lot about the technology, but let me first start with the culture that Splunk had and the culture that we had is actually very aligned. And interestingly enough, most of these large acquisitions that fail for a couple of reasons. One is the culture is not aligned and the people, there's a lot of overlap of technologies. On our side, between security and Splunk, there's almost zero overlap.
Okay.
There's very, very high levels of complementarity. That was fantastic. But the really interesting part that I didn't fully realize, Tom, I don't know if you did, but a lot of these folks know each other from past jobs. Like, Tom Gillis worked with Mike Horn, who runs security for Splunk. Raj worked with Gary. And so, like, all of these people have actually known each other in the industry for a while. So when we got together for the first meeting, they were asking each other how their kids were doing. And then we're like, all right, let's get to work.
Makes it remarkably easy.
It made it remarkably easy. On day one, we actually had a tremendous amount of integration work that had already been done. And so not only are we better together, I think we're going to be faster together because the clock speed and the tempo that we're operating with is really remarkable. And then we'll talk about all of the technologies that make sense. But that, in my mind, culture is at the center of it all. And the people are at the center of it all. And I love the team at Splunk. I, of course, love the team at Cisco. And we built it very carefully, the leadership team. And I think it's been, in 2023, we had more innovation than the previous 10 years combined. And 24 is going to be a multiple of 23. And that was before counting Splunk. Now when we have Splunk, it just goes as an exponential curve.
I was hoping you were going to say that because I've heard you say that a few times.
And I tell you, Splunk, similar story. More innovation in 23 than ever before, picking up the pace of play all the time right now. And I love the way that's translating to us moving quickly on both integration and innovation right now. So it's good stuff.
So I think the one question is there a lot of overlap? Will there be duplicate products, or is it like an integrated product where, give us the roadmap, sort of like visionary, what can people expect?
Deeply integrated. I'll let these folks talk, but I'll just say deeply integrated product set.
Okay.
And the way I think about this is loosely coupled, tightly integrated. You don't have to buy one to get the other. You don't have to buy both in order to use us. But boy, when you do use us together, it's going to be like magic.
Okay.
So I'll give you a couple examples. XDR, and then Tom can embellish more on it. XDR, we are now enriching Splunk with XDR data.
Okay.
Right. Our Talos incident response system and the intelligence that comes from Talos is actually going to hydrate Splunk. And so those are ways that we just get better at detections and be the ability to go out and detect a threat, not just detect, but respond, remediate, and recover from the threat as quickly as possible. Tom, anything to add?
Well, when we think about the security problem that we're trying to solve, lateral movement is the name of the game, right? Attackers are already in. How do we identify them from moving around in the infrastructure? Where does lateral movement happen? happens on the network.
Yep.
And so G2 and Tom both alluded to this. The network is this vast trove of data that's largely untapped from a security standpoint. And I think together, Cisco plus Splunk can unlock that data in a really, really powerful way.
Yeah, I mean, I'd elaborate on that. The geek in me just gets so excited about 2 to 3 orders of magnitude more signal and more data because we have access to both the owned and the unowned networks. I mean, if you extend that out to something like Thousand Eyes that tells us what's happening in the public internet, what's happening within the CSPs as well, all of that is enrichment of the views that come into the SOC. And I think beyond security, where things are purely complementary, in the observability space as well, things are fundamentally complementary, and we take the best of traditional APM, application performance monitoring, with AppDynamics. We marry that to cloud-native APM strengths in Splunk Observability Cloud, and then you tie it all together with Splunk IT Service Intelligence to have kind of a monitor of monitors experience, if you will, that brings together things in IT's KPI terms, so I can troubleshoot services that way. And this is a future that is now. It is not a future that's way out either. We can do these things, and we're going to make some cool announcements this week about how far we've come in, what's it been, 90 days or so?
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Has it been 90 days already?
I don't know.
I don't even think it's been 90 days. Yeah.
I don't know, but it's been quick.
We're talking to practitioners, and I was going to bring it down to earth. And I was going to ask my buddy Tom over here. So for a practitioner, when you think about the combination of Cisco plus Splunk, one of the jobs that everyone struggles with is how do I get my data into Splunk?
No.
And maybe you could talk a little bit about what we're doing with the technical add-ons and how that's going to impact the ability to just practically day-to-day get the data into Splunk?
Yeah, so more than technical add-ons. So there are 3,000 plus, applications in Splunk-based around that help you get productive with Splunk, get data in, build basic dashboards and work with that. We offer a technical add-on capability, which a lot of folks use to bring in unstructured data, and then Splunk schema on read technology helps you work through that. Splunk and Cisco are leading contributors to the OTel standard, and increasingly we look for standardization with that, as well as with eBPF lower in the stack for the emission of telemetry data, which is important. We support those things natively, and you're going to see us continue to invest in and push standards, being committed to remaining open and extensible in everything we do. So this is a critical area. I think what happens with this that's really interesting, that's maybe for another time, is the world is not only distributed in the future, it is also federated in terms of its data management. And Splunk is going to be at the center of helping you federate everything you need for analytics, your kind of high-value operational analytic data you need to look at now, and that lower-value future forensic and investigative data that you might need later. But you're going to have to wait for announcements on that for another week or so.
But another week, because we have another conference next week.
There's more coming, right? Well, but a very practical but very real step that we've taken forward is we have a single technical add-on for Splunk for the Cisco security suites. So one single place where you can go and you can get all of your data ingestion, which is making it easy for day-to-day administrators to get this stuff up and running.
That's fair. I jumped state on you. Sorry. Yes, we're also doing that from an integration perspective, too. An integrated add-on that makes it easy to shove that security data up into Splunk.
So you've announced some amazing stuff during the keynotes. So perhaps you can, just for people who haven't watched that, tell us, what are the big announcements? What are the exciting things happening?
Let's start with security. So I'll brag about Tom for a bit before I make him uncomfortable. But this guy came to us, what was it, a year and a half ago? 18 months ago. And Tom and I were actually keynoting at the RSA. The way we met was backstage. I was getting off and he was getting on. We high-fived. I was getting on and he was getting off or something like that. And then we just kind of talked to each other a few times after. And then before we knew it, we were working together because he's just a man with so much insight in this industry, and he's been around for so long. And what we've done is 2 years ago, we started this journey on a Cisco Security Cloud. Which was a platform, because we're moving in security, moving from a point solution world to a platform-based world. The Security Cloud solves 3 big problems built on a foundation of firewall. User protection, cloud protection for cloud and cloud infrastructure, both public and private, and breach protection, right? Each one of those, we have actually built brand new products from the ground up to completely reimagine the industry in each one of those. And they're all fully integrated together with one common one common plane for telemetry, one common plane for management, one common design language, one single policy engine that can, in single pass, apply policy across multiple enforcement points. So these are things that the industry has just been struggling for a long time to do that we hadn't done. And then one of the things that we've innovated on that I just want to say for a moment and then have Tom talk about is one of the most consequential innovations we made in the 40-year history at Cisco is around this product called Hypershield.
Yep.
And it's not just a new product. It is and you were there at the launch event.
I was going to say, I was going to ask you about Hypershield because that's the last time I saw you both.
Yeah. And it's not just a new product or a new capability or a new feature. It is an entirely different architecture for security as we change from a very kind of 3-tiered architecture to a hyper-distributed microservices-based world.
Yep.
Thousands of microservices, hundreds of Kubernetes containers and clusters, VMs, all talking to each other through APIs. And I think problems like segmentation and patching and updates get to be really hard to go out to solve. And so Tom and his team have built something fantastic. I'll let you describe it, my friend, since you're
here. It's a distributed system that really is unlike anything customers have seen before.
This is Hypershield we're talking about,
This
right?
is Hypershield, yeah. And so the news that we have at the show is that we've announced support for AMD Pensando DPUs running Cisco UCS servers. And if you remember from our past conversation, Hypershield is a fabric, not a fence. So there's lots of little tiny enforcement points everywhere, including these GPU chips that are available in Cisco UCS servers. And so, what I think is interesting about Hypershield is it's a very, very interesting network security solution today, but it gets into the context of when we think about how do we do something remarkable with Cisco and Splunk together and how do we harness all this data, Hypershield is the framework that will allow us to go understand the network in a level of depth that no one's ever been able to do before.
So I understand that right. Hypershield is the network portion, and that's going to integrate with Splunk's data.
Correct.
Is that right?
Correct.
And more than that, Tom, we talked about the integration of XDR with Splunk, and there's short-term integration in terms of us feeding that signal within to Splunk, but then we look ahead longer term and we think about distributed policy application and distributed response and enforcement. I don't know if you want to touch on that.
Yeah. So the interesting thing about the network is that lateral movement happens, as I said, on the network. But there's so much data there that it's very, very difficult for a customer to ingest that into one place. It becomes almost impossible. So our view is rather than trying to move all that data into the analytics, let's turn it upside down. Let's move the analytics to the data. And Hypershield is a distributed system, which means we put policy enforcement points everywhere, including those Pensando AMD chips in UCS, including software, including different enforcement points that will become available over time. And so having the ability to process data locally, but with the context of Splunk as the kind of all-seeing, all-knowing platform, we think that is a really, really interesting North Star that we're all driving towards.
So that was a very important announcement with AMD. We are working with all the chip manufacturers, so NVIDIA and Intel and others, but specifically at this event, we are announcing the AMD DPU support on our servers. Including UCS, which will be happening towards the Q4 October timeframe. And then we'll also have industry-leading server vendors who will actually have the AMD DPUs. But here's the interesting part. Hypershield is one of the core building blocks of the Cloud Protection Suite. Right? But what we're also announcing is this notion of the security cloud control. In addition to all the integrations we're making with Splunk, with XDR and all of that. But security cloud control is our single management plane. And here's what's really interesting. When people talk about management plane and what a platform really is, most people talk about it as it's common telemetry, common design language, single management plane. But the management plane is typically tabs with different product management planes. It's not really fully integrated.
They look the same.
They look the same, but they're not really the same, What we've done with Security Cloud Control that's going to be available in a few months is you will have a single policy which in a single pass can go out and have enforcement on a virtual firewall, in a hardware appliance firewall, in multi-cloud defense, which is another product that we have for North-South in the public cloud, and with Hypershield in one fell swoop. And so imagine the problem that we're trying to solve, which is it's very hard to manage 70 different product families within your environment and actually have a way to go set policy in each one of those individual things. And the contention that you have to deal with the policies. With Security Cloud Control, you set the policy, and then it can get applied to multiple enforcement points in a completely distributed environment.
You know, at G2, you have from the beginning insisted that we are open and extensible.
That's right.
Which means we work with other people's stuff too. So our vision behind Security Cloud Control is those policies will work not just in Cisco gear, but in third-party network security devices as well.
It's a change from the past. I'm glad to hear it.
Correct.
Yep. And you'll see some great folks, that we had, as you saw in the keynote. Microsoft was there. We made a very interesting and I think a very consequential investment in AI. We announced $1 billion fund.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that.
Yeah, but in that fund, we're going to have one of our largest investments we made was with Scale.ai, which is a very consequential kind of AI company startup that's actually now at very large kind of revenue scale, and we're going to be partnering with them to even build more product. And all of that, when you start coupling it with Splunk, this really makes magic happen, because like Tom talked about earlier, you take XDR, and like the other Tom said, there's so much data. We're able to take that data, distill it down, give high fidelity alerts into Splunk so that you can then make sure that you can predict and prevent a threat from a breach from actually happening.
Yeah. And when you think about AI, it's ultimately the domain-centric data that you have, that ability to really understand the telemetry across the full stack that will result in higher efficacy models and will ultimately help us do the things like detection out at the edge and start to kind of log the unlogged, if you will, in the environment selectively and send greater signal to the SOC and take activities a little bit more dynamically. So,
I'm going to do your job, and I'm going to ask a question to my colleague, Tom. So customers ask me, what's the difference between XDR and SIEM?
Yeah.
Yep. Do you want to answer?
It's I think about the difference in a couple of different ways. The SIEM really provides a kind of a mission control type of interface to bring together all the signal and feed in the SOC, help you organize your work, manage your investigation, your threat hunting activities, and your responses. That's really the role of the SIEM. And it does that across all your networks, owned and unknown, and all the feeds you give in. That's right. It's super broad. XDR helps us to narrow that problem a little bit further. And as Tom's already talked about, it sits a little bit more resident down and deeper layers within the stack and allows us to push those detections closer to the point of ingress and interaction of a user and a device. And in turn, that provides a socket for the future where the SOC and the SIEM can push down more of that orchestration and activity and response as well.
Yeah.
So these things are tremendously complementary.
And the other one is the persistence model is different as well, right? In the SIEM, you have a much longer persistence model. XDR is going to be much more contained. But because of that containment, you can flow a lot of the network data and NetFlow data through XDR and then only go out and make sure that the relevant data goes into Splunk.
So the XDR is from Cisco and the SIEM's from Splunk. Is that right?
Well,
Correct.
It's all from Cisco now. But
good answer. Good answer.
But I just think from the audience point of view, it's like there's acquisition and getting that to work together.
But I think it's important because I think that distinction between what's Cisco and what's Splunk, I think over time will start fusing.
I'm sure.
Because it's not relevant what the last thing we want to do at Cisco is ship our org chart.
Right.
Yep.
Right. What we need to make sure is we're focused on outcomes that customers have, make sure that we can get those outcomes serviced in an effective way in a common platform.
I think the concern is right. Big acquisition. There's a lot of talk like Hypershield. Is it real? But it sounds like you've done a lot of work already.
Hypershield's GA in August, my friend.
Exactly.
So targeted GA in August.
So, I mean, that's the point, right? You've already started delivering stuff. It's not just vaporware.
For sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
For sure. I mean, take what we talked about main stage and observability as well. I think our general approach to security and observability is to do integration quickly and meaningfully, but not lose the pace of innovation that we have across the full suite. And that's critical. Main stage. I made a series of announcements. I talked about the approach we're taking to unifying the user experience overall. That's a thing we'll do over time. You get previews of that in the next 90 days. But there's stuff that's available right now that's really important. Common login. Use a shared set of credentials to get into AppDynamics, Splunk Observability Cloud, Splunk IT Service Intelligence. Then we showed Log Observer Connect, the ability, and ITSI integration with AppD, the ability to start with ITSI as a monitor of monitors, showing you multiple different observability domains, some monitored by the core Splunk platform, some by Splunk Observability Cloud, and your traditional apps monitored by AppDynamics, right? The ability to create a unified view across all of that and bring it together and then guide troubleshooting with deep linking, like we showed today, between the Splunk platform and ITSI down into the actual traces, the business level traces for the transactions for the application in App Dynamics, and then round trip all the way back into the event detail in the Splunk log. That's pretty magical in terms of avoiding kind of the swivel chair troubleshooting in multiple services and systems. And that work, we're putting the finishing touches on it right now. That's available next month. So it's real, it's fast, and we're going to keep doing it that way.
And the speed at Splunk is really impressive, but I think the combination of the speed is actually what's also very exciting to me. Because one of the things when we started on this journey, right, about a year before Tom came on, a lot of skepticism in the market was around, well, the vision sounds great. We'll see whether the execution's happening, right? Let me just give you a few examples that brag about the team that we all have the privilege of leading. If you look at user protection, we've actually, just in the last 12 months, we launched a brand new product called Secure Access that actually competes with the likes of, Zscaler and Palo Alto and others, and we feel like we are meaningfully differentiated against them. And we've actually augmented that with identity intelligence so that these kind of SSE platforms are no longer just dumb proxies that have to go to IDP to say, can I let this person in? You can actually know on a continuous basis whether the behavior of that person warrants them continuing to have access into that system. Right? So identity intelligence was another thing we launched. So we launched Secure Access. We launched identity intelligence. We launched, Duo Passport, which is updating all of this. And all of these things are now completely integrated together.
Integrated Thousand Eyes.
We integrated Thousand Eyes. We have then launched XDR from the ground up, which was a brand new product that we built. And all of these products now have hundreds of customers. Right? So these are not like trivial launches. And these are just
in months.
In months, we've had hundreds of customers. And we're just getting started. Hypershield is going to get launched. We already have partnerships. Before the product is even GA'd, we've got a roadmap that we've been executing on. So now we've had a partnership with AMD, and we had actually talked about another announcement that we made at RSA on not just known vulnerabilities, but also unknown vulnerabilities. So like this tempo is, I think, really important. And so that objection that people had was a very valid objection 5 years ago, saying, hey, the proof's in the pudding. Can Cisco actually execute? I think our execution velocity is faster than any of our competitors, arguably, at this point in time.
And G2, the best part about it is we're going to talk about AI and the impact that it has on the industry.
You haven't spoken about AI yet.
It affects us as well. So our developers are using AI tools that are just, taking leaps and bounds in terms of developer productivity. So our velocity over the next 12 months, it's high and it's getting even higher. It is really transformative. I know it gets talked about a lot, but it's warranted because it is such a transformative shift.
Tom, you've been in the game a long time. So it's great to get like experience from all of you. Like if I'm starting out, it's worrying with AI. It's worrying like the new SOC that might come along. But I mean, it sounds like it's getting better for the defenders.
People worrying about their jobs going away? I don't think AI in this domain context eliminates jobs. If you go ask people in the security space what they're worried about, it's enough human capacity to go actually tackle the threat landscape as it emerges and evolves. It's growing exponentially. The data volumes, the complexity of the environments is growing exponentially, as Tom talked about. AI assists in the productivity of the individuals so that you end up with humans focused on the smart tasks of threat hunting. That's what really we want to accomplish with this.
That's not just in the
I'm
SOC,
not too worried about it.
That's true in the network infrastructure.
True in the
it's
NOC,
across
it's
the board.
everywhere.
Yeah, I agree.
But like right now in security, in cybersecurity, there's probably 3.5 to 4 million jobs that go unfilled annually. Annually, right? Right now, your biggest challenge is not, oh my goodness, my security jobs are going to go away. Your biggest challenge is I do not have enough people to keep my defenses in anywhere close to the ballpark of what's going to be a minimum bar required so that I don't have my critical infrastructure at risk that can have lives get lost. Hospital, power plant, utility, financial services. All of these people actually do not have enough people to keep their defenses so that the security posture is at the appropriate level.
I think a concern for many people is it's a bold new world, but it's worrying because they have to keep on learning. Is it going to be like I've got to continue studying like at a crazy rate, or is it going to get better?
I got bad news for you, man.
Yep.
I don't think we're going to ever get to a point where we're going to need to stop learning.
Yep.
Especially in tech, it's part of what makes it fun.
Yeah, that's what. That's
But
actually,
is it going to get worse?
But it's not like you have to completely retool. I think that's really the message here. There's an immediate adjacency to what people are already doing. And so I think maybe it's helpful if we talk a little bit about the approach to kind of, the chat assistant to productivity every day, but then also our approach to embedding AI and machine learning right into the workflow of our applications as well, because that helps you kind of move pretty quickly from what you already know towards being more productive with AI.
See, I think the cosmetic view of AI, the superficial view, is, let's go out and do some small little tasks that can be done in a more efficient way.
Yep.
The true game changers happen when you could actually completely rethink workflows.
Okay.
With AI, whether they be workflows around detection, whether they be workflows around response and remediation, whether they be workflows around prevention, you have to rethink those workflows. And one of the things that you can do effectively in rethinking those workflows is it's all around correlation of data sets in your models. So for example, we just launched a Cisco level AI assistant.
Yep.
Right? Why is that consequential? Because that Cisco AI assistant is extensible through skills.
Yep.
And so my networking team can now attach a skill to the Cisco AI assistant that will then correlate with the security skills that are attached to it. That can then correlate with the collaboration skills that are then correlated with the observability skills.
Yeah.
So we're not going to have 15 AI assistants. What we will have is a single AI assistant with multiple skills where the data gets correlated, and that AI assistant can sit as a separate application or will be embedded into every application that we have.
G2, Gartner says about half of all network outages are due to misconfiguration or misunderstanding of the configuration. And if we build this thing that you're talking about, the way you're talking about it, where it can, these devices are all peers and we can look across multiple different devices, we can make that 50% number 0%.
Yeah.
0%. Now that's high impact, right?
And then we're also embedding, AI models and machine learning kind of right into the everyday workflow of the applications. And so one of my favorite future constructs around this is the idea that we're sitting on a WebEx together and we notice an issue with some service somewhere, that we can just ask the chat assistant right there, universally, some questions about that service. What's wrong with service X? You can start to do your first couple of troubleshooting steps to narrow it down. And then from there, deep link right into the product where AI can help you along further. It can help you choose the right run book to respond to something you never saw before. And it can help you generate an incident report. It's a great use of generative AI. Generate the incident report for me right now. So everybody comes in with the same enriched data, the same context that's necessary when they join the bridge. And we can work together much faster that way. And then, you take it even further towards what we were talking about earlier, Tom. I think there's a role for AI in, all the way down at the edge, as we talked about, in attacking the lateral movement problem, and dealing with route optimization and so much more.
Yep.
DLP, data exfiltration, all those things. By the way, one of the things that we talked about in the Hypershield launch and what we've delivered with Hypershield, and I think you should expect that in all of our products, is AI is actually being built natively in our products from the ground up when we conceive an idea for a defense, rather than as an afterthought where you just patch it in later. And I feel like the kind of problems that we'll be able to solve will be like the creativity with which we can actually imagine solutions today compared to what you could, because of some of these core building blocks of technology that weren't there. The analogy I like to give is, imagine if Amazon.com was founded in 1475. It would be an epically failed company.
Yep.
Why? Because you didn't have the logistics infrastructure in place. You didn't have the internet in place. You didn't have the PC revolution. You didn't have the mobile revolution. All of those things.
You didn't have electricity, dude.
You didn't have electricity. Right?
And all the way back.
All of those things actually make a huge difference in how you can build. So what we've got now is AI as a core building block. We've also got kernel level visibility with eBPF, which is a core building block.
Yep.
And then hardware acceleration. And you pull all those things together, boy, there's some very special things that can happen that we couldn't even imagine solving as problems just a decade ago.
A lot of people watching are technical. They're worried about their jobs with AI. There's a lot of noise about AI taking jobs. I think you've already addressed that. But what's your advice to, the technical audience that have concerns about where things are going? Is it going to get better? What would you advise them to do to skill themselves up? Or what should they focus on? I mean, you've all got many years of experience. So what would you advise?
I think this concern is understandable but misplaced.
Okay.
In that the human spirit is creative.
Yep.
And machines aren't.
Yep.
Right. And so when we bring AI that can do things like generate firewall rules and answer low-level alerts in the SOC, that frees people up to do the more intelligent, creative value add thing.
Yep.
And I think we're just going to find a natural progression there. I don't think it's this big, giant, scary transition, but it's happening.
Yep.
It's kind of happening all around us. Would you agree?
I think, yeah, I do. I also think generally in 30 plus years doing this, I've been through 3 or 4 revolutions that were really just evolutions. That's really what it is in tech. And so, take, for example, Gen AI. That's not the answer to everything.
Yep.
We're going to continue to apply foundational machine learning and statistical methods and algorithms to working with data and data analytics throughout and use the best thing. So it's not like your existing skill set goes away, but as G2 alluded to earlier, part of the fun of doing what we do for a living is, sort of learning and incrementing our skill set. And so now's the time to do that, I think, for the audience in terms of extending the skill set, making sure you understand the core concepts around generative AI, foundational machine learning, et cetera. But to think that you've got to completely reset what you're doing is wrong. The journey to the next plateau, the next better way of doing something, that almost always comes with a step function from the place we are today. And I think we're just in that step function right now.
So I would have a slightly more nuanced perspective on this, which is, I think in the short term, people overestimate the impact of these disruptions. And in the long term, they grossly underestimate it. Will jobs be lost? Categorically, yes, jobs will be lost to AI in the long run. Today, AI is not good at doing jobs. AI is good at doing tasks.
Yep.
Right? In the long run, will there be jobs that we don't need today? Yes, there'll be jobs that are lost. There used to be jobs years ago that no one does today, but there's different jobs that get created. I will say, though, that I don't think us as a society has entirely figured out in the very long term, like 10, 15, 20 years, what the effect of this is going to be and what the implications on society are. So I do feel like things like universal basic income will be things that we'll actually talk about.
Yep.
Much more so in the next decade than we did in the past 2 decades. I don't think those are things that are implausible to talk about. But what in our domain, in security, I just simply think you cannot handle sophisticated attacks at human scale. You must augment human scale with machine scale. And so if you just left it to human scale, what'll happen is the adversaries have the same tools that you do. If you don't actually have a way to respond to that in kind effectively, both defensively and offensively, you won't be able to go out and address, the threats that are coming in from the adversaries. So I think people should be constantly paranoid about how they get themselves upskilled.
Yep.
I don't think that's something that we should take lightly. But I also think that the tech community and the government and the partnership between the public and private sector is going to be important enough that we can say, let's make sure that we can up-level, and have the right policies in place so that people can go out and have some of these hard problems solved collectively between the public and private sector, and not just be very tunnel visioned about it. We have to think broadly. And we have to think about both the upside of AI, but also think very deeply about the downside of AI.
We're getting chased, so we're out of time, unfortunately. So just to wrap up, what's your biggest advice or takeaway for the audience, each of you?
I think from my perspective, we've talked about it. It's about retooling ourselves. It's about expecting to move quickly. We're integrating quickly and innovating quickly so that our practitioners can do exactly the same thing in their environment.
So,
integration is the name of the game. And so we're building this stuff with a level of automation that your day-to-day job is going to get substantially easier, which will let you be more effective overall.
Yeah, I think it's hard to, without being repetitive, one of the most important priorities that we have at Cisco is not just getting so caught up in, feature after feature after feature that's built that doesn't integrate into a whole cohesive platform, but make it easier for customers to adopt our technology in a way, because the true proxy for value is adoption. Are people using the product, loving it, staying safe with it, and coming back for more? And that requires that we actually integrate our different properties. So the networking cloud is going to be tightly integrated to the security cloud, is going to be tightly integrated to the observability cloud, is going to be tightly integrated to the data cloud, is going to be tightly integrated to the collaboration cloud, all loosely coupled, but tightly integrated. You don't need to buy all of them to get value. You can buy one to start with. But boy, when you buy them all, they work like magic.
I've got to ask you this last question. Will defenders win? Because it feels like the attackers are winning.
I have a strong opinion that moving forward, we will have created, for the past 30, 40, 50 years, the advantage has always been with the adversary. Why? Because they have to be right once, you have to be right every single time. That's still the case. But I feel for the first time, because of the data advantage we can provide and because of AI, you might actually have the scales tip in favor of the defender. But we're not quite there yet. I think there's a lot of work to be done between now and then.
Thank you so much. Sorry, we're out of time. Thank you.